So welcome back to the Global Mindfulness in Education Summit. I am one of your two hosts, Dr. Chris Willard, along with Helen Maffini, who's conducting a number of the other interviews. And we're looking all over the world to hear about what's happening in mindfulness. And today we are talking to my friend Amira Valle, and I'm so much looking forward to hearing about her work. And Amira, do you just want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Oh, thank you, Chris. Yes, I'm very happy to be talking with you about this thing that it's my passion, mindfulness in education. Well, I started meditating like 30 years ago in 1990 in Casa Tibet. And there's where I learned my mindfulness practice, like from Buddhism. And then I'm a chemist, and I started working at the neuroscience lab of Dr. Jacobo Greenberg in Mexico at the School of Psychology, doing research on the effects of meditation and mindfulness and contemplative practices in the brain. And that was in the early 90s. And years later, I had my kids. I moved to Miami, and there I studied education. And a few years after working in the classrooms, I decided that what I really wanted to do was teaching mindfulness in the classrooms in education. So I studied mindfulness at the Mindfulness in Education Institute with Daniel Recherfen, and I had wonderful teachers there, and with the intention of bringing someday mindfulness practices to my country. I lived in those years in Miami. I moved back in 2014 to Mexico. And from that date on, I've been working on mindfulness in education here in Mexico, bringing it to schools on different settings. And I'm the author of some books on mindfulness in education for children, for teens as well. And well, that's more or less my background.
Wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about the books that you've created, and are those available in both Spanish and English, or just in Spanish at this point?
The first book I wrote is called Alice in Consciousness, and that is available in Spanish and English. I wrote that 20 years after Dr. Greenberg, this neuroscientist that was the pioneer of the studies of meditation in the brain and effects in the brain. He disappeared on December 1994, leaving no trace. So they closed our lab at the university and never did any more research on meditation and the effects on the brain. So it was very sad. And some years later, Dr. Goswami, who works at Eugene, he told us, a friend of mine and me, that we should write our experiences working for Dr. Greenberg, and we should publish all the work that has not been published. And so for the anniversary of the 20 years of his disappearance, we wrote this book, Alice in Consciousness, which is available in English. And International Symposium of Contemplative Science in 2014 in Boston. So it's available in Amazon, that in English, and we also have the Spanish version here. That was the first book, and it's more like anecdotes and science and what the work we did at his lab. Then when I moved back to Mexico, well, when I was working in Miami, I had studied many different programs and curricula on mindfulness for schools. But in Miami, I had very little kids in my classroom, and there was no curriculum available for that age. So I was wondering, how can I explain these very little kids what mindfulness is, the training of your mind, sit and work on it, see your thoughts. And it was very difficult. So I decided that I was going to make up a story with some characters, and I chose a baby elephant as a representation of the mind because of the analogy of the West, of the mind as a Great Elephant. So this is the book. With the little kids, we started working on the story in Miami. It was just a story. I shared it with, I knew what I wanted to teach the children. And so we made up the story, the children and me, and of the baby elephant and two siblings who rescue the baby elephant and have to train the elephant in order to find the family. When I moved back to Mexico, I decided that I should write it in the form of a book. So it's El Regalo del Elefante, the one I thought that I showed you, this one. And it's been very, very successful. I've been teaching with this program. It's a whole curriculum, but in the form of a bedtime story. It's an adventure story for kids. Every chapter presents a different mindfulness practice. And at the end of every chapter, there is an exercise where the children can learn what was presented as the form of a story. And so, like, these are some of the illustrations. So I wrote it when I moved back in 2015, and it was published on December 2015. And since then, I've been presenting it at schools as a curriculum, as a mindfulness curriculum. And it was very successful. The Ministry of Education in Mexico has recommended it as a very good social emotional education program. So that makes me very happy. And yeah, thank you. And a little time later, I realized that it was not possible for me to go to every school and teach the program to every child. So I decided that what I had to do was to form teachers in order to be able to teach this curriculum. So I designed a program for teachers, and that is like a graduate program for mindfulness in education. 4 generations of students have already been graduated from this. I'm very happy about that because they bring this program to different schools, mostly unprivileged schools, because in Mexico, you know, we have 80% of our population is poor. So it has to be like a volunteer work. So I've been working with public system teachers mainly for 4 years, teaching them how to teach. So I developed this graduate program, which takes like about a year to be finished. And they've been bringing that to schools. Then I decided that we had to do some research on the effectivity of this program. So we have been partnering with DIF, which is Desarrollo Integral de la Familia, which is the national welfare system in Mexico. And we did a huge study of this program with the children of DIF from 2017 to 18. And we found that it had great results, not only during the presentation of the program with children from 1st grade to 6th grade, but also a year later, because we have just also applied the instruments very recently. And we found that they remember the whole program, they remember the practices, they are still using them. So I'm very happy about that. And for me, thank you. And I also realized that, well, this program is very good for elementary and preschool, but we needed a good program for middle school and high school. And I had been asked to write a chapter for a book on mindfulness in education. And while I was doing my research, I found an article which filled me with sadness about the orphans of the war, of the drug war here in Mexico. And we have like 20,000 children whose families have been murdering in their noses. I mean, they have witnesses. And of course, schools have no way to help them to process all these emotional experiences. And if schools don't do something, education doesn't do something, then they will end up being in this organized crime. So it filled me with sorrow. And I remember that while I was in the States, I certified in the program of Mindfulness Without Borders. Mindfulness Without Borders was born in Africa, in Rwanda and Uganda, with the survivors of the genocide and with the soldier children. So they also had been through some terrifying experiences. And Theo Toffler, the founder of Mindfulness Without Borders, decided to develop a program with the help of the most important mindfulness and social emotional education experts to develop something, a program that would help these children. And it was very successful in Africa. So I thought, in Mexico, we are living an undeclared war. The situation of violence in my country is terrible, and the experiences that many children and teenagers are going through are like those of a war. No? So trauma is terrible.
I mean, they're child soldiers, essentially. Yeah.
Yes. So I thought maybe if it helped in Africa, if it helped in Rwanda, why wouldn't it help here in Mexico? So I wrote them and asked them if we could bring this program to Mexico. While I was taking the program, one of my instructors, when she talked, I heard her accent so familiar, and I said, "Oh, this sounds so familiar to me." It happens to be that she's Mexican, Ronnie Teenage. She's one of the instructors, and she used to live like a mile from my home, and no wonder why it seems so familiar, her accent. And when I talked to her, she was also very willing to bring this program to Mexico. It was in her heart. So we both translated the program to Spanish, and we have been forming facilitators on this program since 2016. Already 4 generations of facilitators. And this is a program that is addressed to mainly high school, older than 15 years old. And it's been working wonderfully. So right now, this graduate program that I offer, preparing the teachers to teach mindfulness at school, encompasses all the school system from preschool to university. And we've been having like very good results with that.
That's phenomenal. So what are you seeing like in terms of the changes with the kids? And can you tell me a little bit about what are some of the elements in the program? Is it teaching mostly mindfulness skills or compassion, or are there other ways that you're helping kids work through their trauma?
Yes. Well, the book is actually a combination of emotional regulation practices, mindfulness practices, and empathy and compassion. So the first lesson we teach, the first chapter, we teach about change, about how things change, and sometimes it's not what you used to have. And that's very helpful because the school year is beginning and teachers get a thermometer of what's going on in the class. When we started the study at DIF, it was the year 2017, September, and we had this huge earthquake in Mexico. And it affected the school. The schools were closed for about a month. And when we first started the program, we had a lot of kids who had lost their homes or who had their families living with them, or the school has been affected. Around the school where we were working, there were many buildings that had come down, and there were also some settlements of homeless people, people who had lost their homes. So they were witnessing all that, and they had a very severe trauma about that. So the first chapter about the change really helps them to explain what's new in their lives. And also, we talk about the effects of stress in the body. How does it feel when you face something new, when something scares you? And they were very able to talk about all these experiences. So that's very helpful. It's the first chapter, and it's like a thermometer. And then the 2 siblings in the story, they decide that they have to rescue the baby elephant. And here we introduce awareness of the other and their needs. It's the first introduction to compassion. And the reason why it's presented in the beginning is because we want to address bullying and school violence. So the most important thing is that children realize that there are other children and other children have needs and have problems, and that they have the power to help them, and how do they feel when they help. So this is the introduction, and then we start presenting the mindfulness practices. The first one is the awareness of the breath. When they rescue the baby elephant, they see that it's very scared, that they don't know the elephant language. Elephant doesn't know the human language, so they decide that they can communicate through the breath. They can observe the breath, and they teach the baby elephant how to breathe in order to calm itself. And so that's the third chapter. And then it has a thorn in the foot, in the paw, and they have to take the baby elephant to the vet. And this is the introduction of the body scanning, which is very graphic for children. They really love that practice. And then they have to teach the baby elephant how to walk, because the elephant doesn't want to walk because it has been hurt. So they teach the baby elephant how to walk. And that's the introduction of mindfulness, mindful walking and mindful movement. Then they have to train the elephant in listening, so that maybe he can hear the family or something. And this is a mindful listening. And they hear very strange noise. There had been a drought, so all the plants had disappeared, and that's the reason why there were no animals in there. So they hear this noise, and it's something unexpected for them, completely new, and it's a waterfall. So they hear the sound of the waterfall, and they follow this sound, and they arrive to this wonderful place they have never seen, with water and flowers and fruits, and it's so wonderful. So they learn how to remember this beautiful positive emotion, because in my country we are so focused on the negatives. Violence is rampant, and insecurity, and so many things that when you go to a coffee with your friends, everybody talks about is the negative, the insecurity, and all that. So we're so focused on that, and we need to know the good things we have in our lives. So this is a practice where you introduce the assimilation of the positive emotions, so the focusing on the positive. So it's very nice too, and children love it. And as a homework, I always ask them, talk to your parents and ask them about a very nice experience they have had in their past. So they talk in their families about the good things. And that is something that parents really value, because talking in family is not so common. They usually talk about homework and what you have to do, but not about parents' experiences. And talking about the positive and what left them something good, it starts a conversation between parents and children. So that's something we've been doing, and it has had good results. Then they are in this new place with new fruits, and this baby elephant finds very appealing fruits, but happen to be that some of them are not good. Some of them can be poisonous. So the children need to teach a baby elephant in choosing the ones that are good for him. So they train their senses, the touch, the smell, all that. And this is also an introduction for older children in 5th or 6th grade about the appealing things that might be really nice and yummy, but they are not good for your health. So we can talk about substances and that with the older children. And it's a training in sensorial awareness. And then we have mindful eating, and we have this illustration in the story where children are finally able to ride the elephant. In the Orient, they say that our mind is the most wonderful thing we have. It can take you anywhere you want, but if it's not trained, it can destroy the whole village. So the first thing you have to do is train the mind, train the elephant, and then it can take you wherever you want. So this illustration shows that we have been doing all these mindful awareness practices, so we are now able to bring this awareness to work with others. So this represents the application of the mindful awareness to emotional practices that come later. The next chapter, they are very they're very happy, they already ate, they're tired, so they lay on the ground and they watch the clouds pass by. And they reflect on how some clouds are very beautiful, and how sometimes the sky is black and scary, and how our mind and our thoughts are like the clouds, and our mind is like the sky. And whatever it is, the good and the bad, it will eventually pass. So it's a reflection on the thoughts. And then we have this image where the baby elephant finds a little rabbit in danger. So it's a compassion. No, it saves the little bunny. But first, Rumi, the name of the baby elephant, of the elephant, sees the eyes of the bunny, which is in danger, and remembers when he himself had been in danger as well, and how it feels. So this is like empathy. I have already been in your place, right, and I know how it feels. And since I know how it feels, I want to help you, and right, I want you to be happy. So it saves the bunny, and it feeds him, and it gives him water, and the bunny thanks him. So it's about compassion. So here I introduce the compassion practice. And from the beginning of the book, there has been this character whose name is Nico, and he is a hunter, a child hunter. And he has been setting all these traps for the elephant and for the rabbit, and another trap where one of the siblings, where Maya, the girl, falls on a rock and almost drowns. And when he sees the results of his actions, he sees how Maya, the girl, almost drowns and the baby elephant saves the girl. He feels sorry for his actions. He sees the results and the consequences of his actions. And then he regrets that. And he goes with Maya and Danny and tells them, it was me, the one who set all the traps, and I'm very sorry. I never thought it would hurt you. But I wanted to be accepted by my parents in my tribe, because it was a tribe of hunters. So here we introduce, first of all, conflict resolution, taking in consideration the consequence of your actions, which is something that doesn't happen in my country. In my country, politicians can do whatever they want, and they go like if they have done nothing. And these cartels and all this organized crime. And for children and teens, it's like you can do whatever you want and you will never face a consequence. And what I'm trying to do is to tell them, whatever you do will affect the others, and you have to face those consequences and be in charge of them. So here introduce that. And forgiveness, when they listen what has moved this child, they understand and they become friends. And I forgot first, before that, he says there's a mouse in this box, because you know how elephants go crazy with mice and they lose control. So this mouse represents our triggers. What makes you lose control? And so children reflect, what makes me really angry and feel like I have no control? What makes me so scared that I feel like no control? And they reflect. It might be something very small, like a little mouse, but still, it's something triggers inside you that makes you act like with no reflection before. You don't think before you act. You just act before thinking. So we talk about all these emotional triggers and practices in order to be in control, like the ones that we have already been doing, the mindful breathing, the body scanning of the feet and the legs, bringing your awareness down, and mindful walking, how all that can calm you and bring you this space in order not to react before thinking. And well, that's the emotional regulation. Then this practice of forgiveness. And finally, this hunter, Nico, tells them, because he's very sorry about his actions, and so he wants to make something an amendment. And he tells them, I saw some elephants passing by that mountain, so maybe if you go in that direction, you will find a family. And they go on that path, knowing that the baby elephant will soon rejoin the family. And as they walk, they remember the beautiful moments they had together, and they treasure them, and they put them in their heart, and they are very grateful for all the experiences they did. So this is gratitude, and also letting go, because if they know that they're trying to get what precious, but it's not possible to keep the elephant with them, the elephant belongs to the family. So I introduced the gratitude practices and also the practice of letting go. And this is the last practice of the book. So it closes like the whole cycle of the school year or the school semester where it's presented. And then at the end, just some reminders of the most important things you learned in the book. And that is one of the freebies I have in my webpage. It's called Record para el refri, no? For the fridge. And it's the most important thing that you have to remember to have a mindful life. So that's the story for elementary and preschool.
Oh my gosh. We've met briefly. I've heard about your work. We're friends on Facebook. I had no idea kind of just how extensive the work that you're doing has been. And what an incredible, what an incredible book and program that you created and adapted. And I just I'm so grateful to learn about it. And I'm so grateful to hear that you're doing this really good work and really with really challenging situations and kids that are in just such challenging situations. So thank you so much for your incredible work. What do you think has been most challenging, or what has surprised you about maybe how much more mindfulness has been well received in Mexico and with some of these kids that you've been working with? Anything in particular?
Well, first, there's a lack of knowledge of what mindfulness practice is in most public schools. In private schools, since we are neighbors with the states, wealthy parents travel a lot and everybody knows what mindfulness is. So private schools have that as some important thing, to make a higher rank for the school. Right. But in public schools, there's a great misunderstanding of what it is. So what I have been doing is training and teaching, especially the administrators, what mindfulness practice is, the effects on the brain. I focus a lot on the science, and in order to make a distinction between New Age practices, because sometimes they may think it's some kind of New Age, like they hear meditation and they are afraid of introducing it at school. And also in Catholic schools, there has been some resistance, and especially some very traditional Catholic schools.
Yeah.
So my role has been mainly education for administrators and teachers, and focusing a lot on the effects on the brain and on the effects on the body, and what trauma is, because most of these schools have a lot of kids and teens with trauma, and how it can help to children, first of all, to have homeostasis in their body, to have a healthy body, a healthy mind, and also to have better relationships with their peers, because once that you are aware of what you're feeling, you can be aware of what the other one is feeling and understand him and put yourself in his shoes. So this has been what I've been trying to do in public schools. And also for middle school, we have just written a series of books on social emotional learning. 3 books. Well, first, second, the pink one is for second grade and third grade. There are books for the children and for the teachers. And these books were written with Vizquerra. Have you heard of him? Rafael Vizquerra. He's an institution in Spain, in Barcelona, He was almost one of the first ones who introduced emotional education in schools. So I'm very honored to be co-authoring those books with him and some of the great teachers in the education department at the university, at the Ibero University. And also I am teaching neuroscience to the students of this graduate program on social emotional education at the university. So I'm teaching like all levels from preschool to university.
Right. I love it. Yeah.
And well, right now we're developing some books for parents, some workbooks for that book, and like for every grade from first to sixth grade, because you know how it's like iteration, no? Like you start to teach the same things over and over, but you use different techniques with little ones with toys and very ludic things, and then with the older ones with more reflection and journaling and things like you can go more in depth with them. Right. So we go over and over, but more in depth every day.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share with everybody a little bit about your work. And if people are interested in learning more about you or learning more about your books or the organizations that you work with, where can they go? Do you have a website or any place in particular where people from around the world, maybe particularly in the Latin world and Spanish-speaking world, could be learning more about the kind of work that you're doing and the resources that you have?
Yes, there is a webpage for the book, which is elregalodelelefante.com, and you can see everything about the book there. There is also the Elephant Wise Institute. This one I founded when I lived in Miami in 2011 when I started working at school. So elephantwise.org, and there you can find the trainings for teachers and all that. And then also my personal website, amiravalle.com.
Wonderful.
My work, my publications. And one more thing that I'm very proud of is that this for the students of this graduate program, in order to be certified and graduate from the program, not only they have to apply these practices in non-privileged places with children and teens, but also they have to do a dissertation work about the applications of these practices in Mexico. So we have already published 26 and 50 more are in their way to come. And I'm very happy because this is research and the application of mindfulness and social emotional practices for Latin children, for Mexican children, done by Mexican teachers in Mexican environment. And that's something new. And
that's so wonderful and so important. And I love that you have, as part of the work, they have to be working with underprivileged kids and not just going and, working in a more privileged setting or private school or something like that. It's actually something I've learned a lot in traveling in Latin America, just how many schools and educational programs actually require working with underprivileged people or as part of your completion toward your degree. I know it's true in Colombia and in other places that's just part of the education is doing this really important service work. So I appreciate you just hearing that you're doing that in Mexico as well. So thank you again so much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch, and I'm sure our viewers will be interested in learning more at amiravalle.com and El Regalo de Elefante as well. And so again, just thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing more from you, and I look forward to seeing you again at some point, hopefully pretty soon. So thank you so much, Amira.